Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horrorzoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare, talking all things horror from the 80s, 90s, and today. Today's episode is brought to you by the Grandpa Hugo stand-up comedy tour, banned in 12 cities. Will your city be lucky 13? Come get your laughs on with Grandpa Hugo. We are back. Welcome to another episode of Horrorzoid, everybody. I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
And this may be the most controversial episode of Horrorzoid in history because today we're talking all about one of our favorite film series, the Descendants films, of course. No, we're not talking the Descendants films. We are talking about one of our favorite directors, though, who is one of the most polarizing figures in all of film. We are talking about Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
Today he's one of our favorite directors. He might be our favorite director collectively. Every single movie we have found some form of enjoyment in there.
Yeah.
Are they all winners? Absolutely not. But we have a lot of fun with them.
We do. And I feel like I can already hear the people that are like, hot take, I like the Rob Zombie Halloween. So there
are no more hot takes anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck hot takes. If I hear anybody fucking else say hot take, I will cry.
He's gonna explode.
Do that.
Oh, he's gonna cry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I'll
even more
explode
sad.
with tears. Don't do that to me. I hate when people say hot take now.
I think
it's also up there with unpopular opinion. If anybody who says, unpopular opinion, I think the Pixar movies are actually really good. That's not a fucking unpopular opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of weird. I just feel like if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. It doesn't have to be a popular or unpopular opinion, and it doesn't have to be a hot take to like a Rob Zombie Halloween movie. But you're right. It is a very polarizing, I want to say movie, but like movies, like everything he does is polarizing.
He can't do anything without there being some form of, some portion of the audience, some segment of the crowd coming out of the woodwork and saying, that was shit.
Right. But I mean, whenever you think about it, I feel like just as many people shit on Rob Zombie films as they do any other director. We all love M. Night Shyamalan, but he's had some fucking awful movies.
Right. He's had some terrific movies, but he's also had some really bad movies. We admit that.
And I would say with Rob Zombie, at least he's consistent. I feel like every movie he has, you have the Rob Zombie flair, whether it's the gore or the language or the way it's shot. A lot of people hate the shaky cam shit he tends to do. But he is consistent.
Right. A Rob Zombie film. When you if you were to turn on TV right now and there is a movie, you would be able to know that's a Rob Zombie movie or it's not a Rob Zombie movie.
Right. I mean, Sherry Moon aside.
Right, exactly. Even without Sherry being in any of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Rob Zombie, his films, they have a distinct feel. They have a distinct atmosphere to them. And I think that's one thing I really love about his movies. It's almost like this weird comfort zone where as soon as I turn it on, I know what I'm going to get, even if it's a movie I've never seen before.
Yeah. And, a lot of that obviously is, the things that he enjoys or the things that he grew up around have a lot of influence in his filmmaking. One of our favorite things in House of a Thousand Corpses is the room that feels kind of circus-like with the way it's set up. But he grew up with parents that worked as at a carnival.
Right.
So that makes sense where that aesthetic kind of comes into play in a lot of his movies.
Yeah. I see you're reading the notes that we wrote down earlier. But we'll get into who Rob Zombie really is. He was born January 12th, 1965 in a town called Haverhill, Massachusetts, which in my notes I wrote down here, it sounds like a fictional town from an H.P. Lovecraft short story.
It really does.
Doesn't it sound like, yes, along with Miskatonic University, he also went to Haverhill.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds like something like that. But as Natalie pointed out, up until the age of 12, Rob Zombie, his parents were carnies. They worked in circuses. They worked under the big tent. They were legitimate carnies.
Yeah.
It's an interesting story when you think about that. But also, like you pointed out, he's got that carnival influence in a lot of his films. You pointed out House of a Thousand Corpses. I immediately think of 31.
Right. I mean, clowns, period, are very prevalent in his movies. Down to, of course, the clown design that they came to in Halloween for Michael Myers
Mm-hmm.
being like a full clown face. And, you have clown characters in all the movies, but there are so many settings. With 31, obviously, there's the whole circus area. There's even like the little like puppet things that Charlie sees in the beginning of the movie, like
And at the end.
And at the
Yeah.
end, the little rest stop, like weird wood puppets. It's like circusy music and stuff. So it's very, very prevalent in all of his movies.
Very true. Very true. And Rob Zombie, so yeah, his parents left the circus when he was 12 because there was a giant riot that broke out. Tents were burned, and his parents realized this is not a place to raise kids. One of those kids also being the frontman of Power Man 5000,
Hell
Spider
yeah.
One, if anybody remembers that band from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure Spider-One had a small cameo in one or two of his movies.
I'd have to go back and look
Yeah.
because I don't remember any Spider cameos, but it wouldn't surprise me because maybe it was like a Matthew Lillard thing where he wore a mask and we didn't know.
Very
but
well could be.
Yeah. Spider and Rob Zombie obviously very close. They just went on tour together with the Monsters of Metal, I think it was called, something like that.
I
Really
believe
cool,
so.
really cool tour that I'm upset we missed out on. But
Right.
yeah, I'm sure it was a good show. But yes, Rob Zombie, before he got into film, he was more known and probably still is more known as a recording artist, as a musician. In 1985, he formed a little band called White Zombie. And already you see the horror influence because, of course, the famous old school horror movie called White Zombie was a huge influence on him and his career and his whole aesthetic and his look. But that 1985, I didn't realize they went back that far.
Yeah, I was born in 1985, so not only does that make me feel old, I'm sure it makes him feel a little bit older, obviously. But it's kind of mind-boggling because to me, I feel like I'm like, no, not 85. It wasn't that far back, right?
No, but of course, I think their hits were more so in the 90s. They were,
Yeah,
the
for
Journeymen.
sure.
They were out there touring, busting their ass, trying to become as big as they were.
Right.
And,
But of course, everybody knows when he went solo and graced us with...
fucking Hellbilly Deluxe.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I had that album. I had that. I had Sinister Urge. In the beginning, there wasn't a Rob Zombie album that I didn't have.
Yeah, they were banger, banger, banger.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There was not a bad song on a lot of those first few albums.
Yeah.
And in between, in 1985, when he formed White Zombie, in 1998, when he went solo and released Hellbilly Deluxe, in 1993, he met a gal named Sherry. And Sherry and he have been together ever since. And, of course, she is now the star of all of his movies.
Yeah.
To the point that people are joking and making memes where it's Rob Zombie's Jaws and it's just a picture of Sherry Moon superimposed where the shark would be on the Jaws poster. And I love it.
Yep,
I'd fucking watch
absolutely.
that.
But I mean, can we talk about how romantic that is even if she's not the greatest of actresses, we've talked about this with the Scream Queens episode because she is one at this point, obviously. But, like, he puts her in all of his movies.
Yeah.
Like, I think that relationship, that dynamic is just fucking awesome.
Well, and you're right. There is something very romantic and heartfelt about it that he loves her. He wants to be around her as much as possible. And obviously, if he was working, doing one thing, and she was out doing something else, then they wouldn't have all that time together that they do. So I don't blame him there. But also from a practical standpoint, you and I have talked about this, but one thing about him casting Sherry from a practical standpoint that actually makes sense as a director is, as a director, you don't have time to sit there and just shout out stuff to people. And if you're working with a different actress every time, and a lot of directors do, most directors do, but if you're working with a different actress every time and you're shouting these instructions and these directions, that's a new actor, that's a new performer that has to get used to your directorial style. Whereas if
Right.
you're casting frequent players, like Rob Zombie does, people have pointed out, Adam Sandler does the same thing. We talk
Mike
about
Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan. Yep. All these
They
directors
get
do
their
that.
crew.
Right, and it's not just a sentimental thing. It's not just a romantic thing in Rob Zombie's case. It is very practical.
It is, because these people know how you work and how you're gonna want to direct things. And I feel like, they just kind of get it. They just go into that character of whatever movie they're working on and they just do it.
I imagine he's able to tell Sherry little things, and she probably picks up on things. They've been together for so long. She probably picks up on things that he doesn't even say.
Yeah.
Like, she just probably notices little ticks, like, oh, he didn't like that. Let's change it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it makes me wonder, I'd love to see some behind-the-scenes stuff, because I bet there's little things that she'll do behind the scenes, or little things she'll communicate to the cast, like, hey, don't do that again.
Right.
Before Rob even has a chance. Like, I imagine that's the level of connection that they have.
Yeah.
Because, and to me, I get that impression because the films do flow so well.
They do. They really do.
Like, everything.
And I feel like,
yeah.
there's other people he's worked with, that we'll get to a little bit more later. But, there's so much footage out there and behind the scenes stuff that we haven't watched that we just need to pop in those DVDs or Blu-ray discs or whatever and watch those, because there's always so many cool behind the scenes things. But I have seen a little bit of it. And I think it was Jeff Daniel Phillips had posted something about just how cool everybody is, and like they're just these amazing, humble people. And some of them, like Jeff, like Sherry, like Richard Brake, all of these others who got to work with him over and over, it does feel like this little family thing. Even if it is easy to work with these people, it's like they're cool people. Like, everyone always talks about how kind they are and how sweet they are, and just, I don't know, it feels like a weird little Rob Zombie family.
Yeah, they do. They have a great reputation of being a family and a great chemistry there. And I think that harkens back to him and his parents and the circus background. Because when you think about it, with the circus, you're traveling around with the same group of people.
Yeah, they're like
some
family.
People come in and some people leave. But at the same time, it's a family. We see that at like the beginning of a movie like 31, where it's Carney's. Like, it's his real life.
And they're super close.
They're super close. They're tight-knit. They act like a family. Panda even says about the other character, the first one to go, I forget his name off the top of my head, but he says about him, he's like that's my brother,
right?
Exactly. That's he calls him my brother.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that you kind of see that inspiration from his real life and his real background weaving into these films. So we're going to start talking about the films, and before we start talking about the films, though, I just want to say this is officially our first Hero of Horrorzoid, and we say thank you to Rob Zombie.
Thank you, Rob Zombie, for being so awesome, so scary, yet so nice and sweet, and giving us all of these glorious movies.
And music.
I mean,
I was a fan of his music way before I was a fan of his movies, and
absolutely,
it just all translates. I haven't heard a bad song, and I haven't seen a bad movie, so he's one of my favorite entertainers, and it just makes sense that we would name him as our first Hero of Horrorzoid. He has influenced so much of what we, as horror fans, love.
Yeah.
So
100%.
We're going to get into it. In the first film we're going to talk about, we're going to go in chronological order here. Released in 2003, House of 1,000 Corpses.
Fuck yeah, Dr. Satan!
Dr. Satan! It is absolutely, this is a comfort movie of ours. And before we get into the film itself, let's kind of go over the history, because out of all of his films, this probably has the trickiest history of any of them.
It does. It's the more complicated, I think, of all of them.
It is. And so his first film was not easy to come about. It was released in 2003, but the ball actually got rolling in the late 90s, like around the time he was deciding to go solo as a musician, breaking away from White Zombie and going solo as Rob Zombie. He was also working with Universal to create a ride for their amusement park.
Yeah, for, everyone knows, if you're a horror fan, that Universal has always kind of had that spooky season in their amusement parks. It evolved into, I don't know how long it's been going, but the Halloween Horror Nights. And so I always think it's super cool that this started as him trying to make an idea, a concept for a ride at Universal, because of the murder ride scene. I just kind of want to know, was it like one of those cool rides where you would hop in the little thing and sit in it? Like, obviously there's not a guy pushing you, but like,
look, if Erwin Keyes as Ravelli is going to be pushing me through, fuck yeah, as long as he's not touching my hair.
Exactly.
We're good.
But I mean, hell, they could even have creepy little animatronic up behind you, it works. But like, I remember as a kid going to Kings Island, it's closest here in Indianapolis. And
they had a ride like that.
They had a haunted ride.
That was probably the first thing I ever rode at Kings Island.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was so cool. You go in the big building, cool little waiting area with spooky mirrors and shit. And like, you got up and sat in this thing that almost looked like something that would be on a teacup ride,
See, I feel like it was almost like a church pew kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
It
was very much made to look like a church pew.
Absolutely. And it would just go along these tracks. And that's what the murder ride felt like. So I just kind of wonder, like, is that where it started? Like, the full concept was like, the fucking murder ride.
Yeah, that's what I wonder too, and it probably did. Probably had a huge influence on it. But so he decides to make this amusement park ride for Universal Studios. Then he's like, "What about a movie?" And Universal loves the idea. They let him film it on the back lot of Universal Studios. If you watch the film, you can kind of see different spots here and there where they were, you know.
There's different homes. Yeah. I think the home that the dad is in whenever he calls.
Denise's dad.
Yeah,
yep,
Denise's
absolutely.
dad. The home that the Fireflies live in is actually still on the Universal back lot.
Yep, you can
see
still
it
see
on
it
the
on
tour.
tours. Yeah.
So it's really, really cool that they just got to go film on the back lot. Do that.
Could you fucking imagine, like Rob Zombie obviously grew up with the Universal monsters. Like, could you imagine filming on the fucking Universal back lot? He had to be a kid in a candy store.
Well, and you and I have talked about this though. There's scenes in House of a Thousand Corpses where you see a lot of like Universal stuff. Like there's Creature from the Black Lagoon stuff in
there's a whole fucking wall when,
there's the whole there's the whole
when
wall.
Sherry is torturing Jerry.
Yeah.
When Baby is torturing Jerry, and she's like, "Hey, poopy pants!" As soon as she walks in, you see Creature of the Black Lagoon all over the fucking wall. It's
exactly
tremendous.
And it makes me kind of wonder because I don't know how long it's been there. This is just a thought that popped into my head. But when you go to Universal in Florida, there's a whole restaurant that's themed off of the Universal monsters. There's like the creatures up on top holding a pizza and shit. It kind of makes me wonder, is there a room in there that has that painted on it and they got a film in there?
How dope would that be, right? Yeah, I think that'd be amazing.
But you can see the Universal influence in the movie. I 100%. Think that's awesome.
Yeah. So he makes the movie and turns it into Universal, and Universal is pissed because they couldn't get an R rating. It was totally NC-17, and as soon as they saw it was going to be NC-17, the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, rated it NC-17. They said, we don't want anything to do with it. Rob Zombie, I don't know if he went out of pocket or if he got money from somewhere, but he bought the rights to the film, which is not a cheap thing to do.
Right.
To buy the entire rights to a film. Yeah, sure, Universal probably wasn't fighting him too hard, but they're going to make their money.
Yeah, they're going to still get their money from that risk, that chance,
Yeah. So he thought about releasing it independently, but thankfully he was able to strike a deal with a little company at the time called Lionsgate that was still not fledgling, but they weren't as big as they are now. Like Lionsgate is a huge company.
They're huge,
but
monstrous.
At the time, keep in mind this is before the first Saw movie released, which in my opinion really put Lionsgate on the map as far as a horror movie distribution company. This is before the first Saw, and they take a chance on Rob Zombie as a director, and they release House of a Thousand Corpses. Of course, they get it down to an R rating. They're able to whittle it down somehow.
Yeah, I think there were 2 mass edits down, I think, is what I was reading about it. And finally, an R rating.
Yeah, it was a blessing, thankfully. In 2003, it got an R rating. Lionsgate was ready to release it, and they did. And the rest is history. Lionsgate released House of a Thousand Corpses, and then we got one of the best movies in our opinion.
Exactly.
So House of a Thousand Corpses, we are introduced to Bill, Jerry, Denise, and I always forget Mary. Yes, I always forget her name, Mary. So Bill, Jerry, Denise, and Mary are driving down the road. Jerry, played by Chris Hardwick, and Bill, played by Rainn Wilson, 2 of the funniest guys that we've ever seen. So we're introduced to them, and we follow their antics as they are on the road, and they stroll across a little place called Captain Spaulding's, which the opening of the film actually takes place at Captain Spaulding's, and we see 2 guys trying to break in, and immediately we get Captain Spaulding, badass fucking, he doesn't take any shit, and he's going to shoot you in the fucking face.
Yep, literally.
Like, from the get-go, that's our first fucking scene, is Captain Spaulding shooting these motherfuckers in the face for trying to rob him.
Right, and forever Sid Haig became every horror girl's favorite clown. Like, he's just so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I love...
Move over, Jack Skellington. All the girls love Captain Spaulding now.
Exactly. I mean, that opening scene is iconic. We really love the way it starts with just this random casual fucking conversation in a gas station. But when the robbery kicks in, as you said, he goes full kick-ass. You get that fuck your mama line, and you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, Captain Spaulding's
as soon as he starts
awesome.
saying, fuck your mama, fuck your sister, fuck your grandma, most of all, fuck you. God, it was just one of the most intense scenes. One of the best ways to open the film. No disrespect to Dr. Wolfenstein. Great opening little
Right.
segment there. It's our only cameo to date of Rob Zombie in his own movies and the Dr. Wolfenstein stuff. But then, of course, yes, we get the explosive scene with Sid Haig shooting these motherfuckers in the face. Some hilarious conversation with him and the late, great Michael J. Pollard. And then, of course, Bill, Jerry, Denise, and Mary stumble upon the oddities that is Captain Spaulding's roadside attractions. And they say they're
Murder Ride.
And Murder Ride, yes. One of our favorite scenes is when they're getting ready to go on the Murder Ride, and Jerry says, he's like, you're going on the Murder Ride with us.
I don't want to go on a murder ride.
Yes, you do want to go on a murder ride. And then Mary also, one of our favorite lines, Mary looks right at him. She's like, hey, how about we skip the murder ride? And he's like, hey, how about we go?
You can't tell me that Jerry is not like part elf somewhere, because the way his lines are delivered are just so fucking bizarre. From the very get-go, he does weird little accents and stuff. And
Jerry is hands down one of the best little annoying assholes in a movie ever.
He
His
is.
lines are terrific.
The way he slams onto the car door and he's like, wakey, wakey, eggs and bacon.
Oh my God.
You're just like, dude, what the fuck is this guy?
He adds so much fun to the movie. And then, of course, Rainn Wilson playing the straight man there to his comedic follies.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we have that one of my favorite scenes in Captain Spaulding's shop, where Rainn Wilson, Bill, is asking him questions, and he literally he's like, how come you asking so many jackassy questions? And then he backs him up, and he gets really loud and intense in his face, and Bill's like, well, Jerry, help! And then of course, Captain Spaulding's just fucking with him the whole time.
Exactly. He's
phenomenal.
fucking awesome.
Yeah, Sid Haig, R.I.P. We miss Sid Haig every day. He is an absolute legend. And if it weren't for performances like this, we wouldn't miss him so dearly.
Exactly.
And then, of course, yes, as Natalie pointed out, and we talked about earlier, they go on this murder ride. We hear about serial killers Albert Fish, Ed Gein, but then we hear about a local legend of S. Quentin Quayle, Dr. Satan. And we find out that Dr. Satan was this medical student at Willows County Medical Hospital, nicknamed Weepin' Willows on account of the cries of never-ending pain, as quoted by Sid Haig so beautifully. And we find out that Dr. Satan was a local legend. He was trying to make medical experiments and basically super soldiers out of the mentally insane. Mm-hmm. Once they found out what he was doing, the townspeople took him out and hung him. But the only problem was they went back the next day and his body was found to be missing. And
I'm actually convinced that at this point you just want to quote House of a Thousand Corpses for the rest of the episode.
I could probably recite the whole episode. But yes, of course, now this local legend gets Jerry and Bill and Denise and Mary interested, and he tells them where to go. And of course, this is the middle of Texas. And as we know, teens in Texas, and this takes place in the 70s, teens in Texas driving down the road in the 70s doesn't end well. As you can already see, this is kind of Rob Zombie's love letter to Tobe Hooper's 1974 original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Mm-hmm. This is a huge love letter to it.
Oh, yeah.
Everything about this, from the setting to the atmosphere, the environment of the film, everything,
character inspirations.
Even he used some of the actors. He used an actor from A Texas Chainsaw in the great Bill Moseley, who plays Chop Top in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and of course plays Otis Driftwood in Rob Zombie's Firefly films.
Which is perfect because, our teens eventually end up at the house where the Fireflies reside and shit goes south real fast. But
we are introduced to...
The way you're introduced to them is fantastic.
Yeah, the first one we're introduced to is Baby Firefly, who becomes a recurring character throughout some of Rob Zombie's films.
And Sherry Moon Zombie, iconic baby. I fucking love her. That laugh is everything.
Who doesn't love Sherry Moon as Baby? One of the best characters in all of horror. So she's the first one we're introduced to. Then, of course, we are introduced to
Mama.
Mama Firefly, Rufus Firefly.
Tiny.
He's called RJ.
Yeah.
Rufus Jr.
Rufus Jr.
And Tiny, as you mentioned. And the last one we meet in a great introduction, in my opinion, is Otis Driftwood, who's, of course, not a blood relative of the Firefly family. Honestly, I don't know how the family tree breaks down, but it's it's strange. It definitely forks somewhere, but I'm not sure where.
There is a song that helps us with where they are, but it's still a little confusing along the road.
Yeah, if you're curious and knowing, they do explain. Rob Zombie explains it in the song "Pussy Liquor" on the soundtrack for House of a Thousand Corpses. He does go into some of the family backstory. Mama gives some of the backstory too, but there's so much going on in that dinner table scene. It's one of the most amazing scenes. There's a lot happening. It's very, you've got the kids, you got the teens talking, you've got Otis talking, you got Mama talking, and of course you have Grandpa Hugo being Grandpa Hugo. It is a manic scene if I've ever seen one.
It is. And it leads to this great, of course, performance scene where for whatever reason they barely eat dinner and then they go and have like a comedy show with Grandpa Hugo, and then Baby Firefly does a little singing number, pisses off one of the girls. They go to leave, of course, and Otis and Tiny stop them in the rain and drag them all back in. This is where shit goes fucking sideways.
Yeah, and then the police get involved because Denise's dad has called and said she never came home. So we now see this is where the movie kicks into fucking high gear, and I it's fucking ballistic from here on out, because you get the cops in with Captain Spaulding. You get the discovery of a body, because all the time we keep hearing on the radio and on the TV all these little things about these cheerleaders who went missing. And of course we see Otis has them chained up in the fucking house, and he is reciting his doomsday prophecies to them, which another terrific scene that we quote all the time. And he really sets the tone so well, but then, like I said, it goes bonkers and goes off the wall quickly after they reveal their true intentions to the kids and bring them in. And then we've got Denise with Tiny getting chained up in the basement. We get
she's
Jerry
like a little
getting
doll.
scalped. We get the police finally do close in on them, and then we get one of your favorite scenes.
What's that?
Your Natalie's favorite scene, hands down, in this whole movie is the scene where
the shootout.
Walton Goggins,
Yes.
who is this is one of the first roles I remember Walton Goggins in, and I absolutely love him. He was in Justified. He was in Ant-Man and the Wasp. He's done some really cool shit, but this was one of his early roles, and I think it's great because the scene in question is a scene where Otis comes out and tells him to get on his knees.
But the whole thing about this scene is something that Rob Zombie does really well in all of his movies, I feel, where you pick a really good fucking song and you can't hear what anyone's saying. You only see kind of what's going on. So, you can kind of guess what Otis is saying to him. But the scene the reason it's my favorite is because it's something I don't think I've ever seen in another movie, where you get this really exceptionally long pause on a very uncomfortable scene, because
very long continuous shot.
Yes. And Otis has this cop get on his knees all while this song is playing. It's all kind of happy country
really beautiful song.
Yeah. And the scene pauses, the music ends, and you get this zoom out of Otis with this gun up to this cop's head, and it goes on for 26 fucking seconds. And then
longest 26 seconds in film as far as I'm
concerned.
concerned.
He pulls the trigger, and every time we watch it, it's just like, oh god,
it feels like it gets
over?
longer and longer each time we watch it. Like you said, 26 seconds. I'm determined the first time we watched it was only a second.
Right.
And now it keeps getting longer and longer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's just one of those scenes in this movie, though, that I feel like as a full aesthetic, I just love everything about it, because you get the weird cuts in the movie. One of your favorite things is the skunk ape scene.
I love the little skunk ape cutaways. The cutaways make the movie, in my opinion.
Even if it's just like, you see, there's a couple where it does it for like her running away, and it's like, but then you get the ones with like the townspeople and stuff.
Yep.
And that's just, everything about this film's so cool. You said in the beginning it's a comfort movie, and it is for a lot of those reasons, the aesthetics of it, but also just how bonkers the fucking plot is, and this great dialogue you get from the Firefly family. It's difficult to say. And I know a lot of people enjoy it more and more as they watch it, and I can kind of agree. I remember seeing this in theaters and was just like, the fuck did I just watch?
I think that's everybody's
What
initial
is this?
knee-jerk reaction.
Because
yes.
it is, and I feel like in light of, thinking about movies in theaters like Terrifier 2, which the gore goes far beyond House of a Thousand Corpses.
It does.
It's interesting for me to think back when I thought that this was such a very gory movie, because it is, and it's kind of uncomfortable in different ways without being so over the top. But I feel like if you like Terrifier 2, you would probably like this just because of how bonkers it is.
I agree. It's so off the wall. Like, it's in the same family for sure. And it really deserves a lot of credit. And I think a lot of people shit on it. And even Rob Zombie has gone back and said, he's a better filmmaker than he was when he made this movie. But,
sure,
there's still so much to love about it.
It is. There's just, we've kind of gushed over it. But when it comes down to it, we get this introduction for a lot of recurring people, again, that work with Zombie, like Sherry Moon and Bill Moseley. Sid Haig. You have all of these people, and it's kind of cool to go back and see how it was when it started.
Even Chris Hardwick has worked with him again.
Right.
Yeah.
And then looking at their most recent movies and seeing how they are. But there's just something so special about House of a Thousand Corpses to me, and I hope more people would maybe give it a second try. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and it never will be for those people, and that's cool, but I think out of all of Rob Zombie's movies, this one is going to be my favorite
House
forever.
of a Thousand Corpses is, I'll say it right now, it's my favorite as well,
yeah,
for sure. But House of a Thousand Corpses, we could gush about it forever. We've talked about the plot. We could probably give you the whole rundown of the movie, but we'll spare you. But moving on, House of a Thousand Corpses was so successful it received a sequel. And 2 years later, Rob Zombie released a follow-up called The Devil's Rejects.
Very different movie.
Well, and there's a lot of discussion on, is it a sequel or is it, almost like anthology style? But I think, and Sherry's even gone on record in saying, she doesn't see it as a sequel. But it's hard to deny it's a sequel. It's got the same characters and the same kind of concept of everything, but it really, it's such a great continuation of it. I think the only thing that I would have liked to have seen is there's a deleted scene on the DVD and the Blu-ray that actually has Dr. Satan's return. Like, we see Dr. Satan in the first movie in House of a Thousand Corpses, and we got a deleted scene where he is in the hospital being tended to by a nurse played by Rosario Dawson, and he just straight up fucking kills her.
Right.
And that's our follow-up, and that's how we tie it together with Dr. Satan. But other than that, it really does take Otis and Baby and Captain Spaulding on a very different journey.
Yeah.
It's less horror movie and more action, police chase movie.
Right, yeah, because they're on the run, and they're getting out of the house. They're meeting up with Spaulding at this weird little hotel, and of course, with it being a horror movie, you get a group of people and a family who get fucked up in the process because they get in their way.
Yeah, hardcore trigger warning. There is a lot of uncomfortable shit in the scene where they attack these 4 people at this hotel.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
It's pretty hard to watch.
So SA trigger warning, really heavy one.
Yeah, really, really heavy.
But as far as some of the other interaction, I really, really like some of the conversations. Of course, you get the iconic line of Otis after he's beat the shit out of these 2 guys, where he leans over and goes, "I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work."
Well, this is also the film where we get Sherry sees the sign for ice cream. Baby sees the sign for ice cream and says, I want some ice cream. And
there's no ice cream in your fucking future.
No ice cream in your fucking future. And then Sid, as Captain Spaulding, says, I think I'm going to get me some Tutti fucking Fruity. And now everybody and their mother says Tutti fucking Fruity. It's not Tutti Fruity anymore. It's Tutti fucking Fruity.
Tutti fucking Fruity.
Thank you, Sid.
Yep, absolutely. The lines in this are iconic. But you kind of get away from Dr. Satan. I think I kind of read that he just didn't feel like it fit into the movie
as it evolved. I could see that.
And they're getting away from the house. You can kind of leave that weird little paranormal moment behind. But you have them running from the cops, and then you have the cop story going on the other side, where they've got Mama Firefly in custody, and it's an action movie because they're on the run, they're shooting, there's craziness going on with the cops, but it is so different, yet again, it still feels like a Rob Zombie movie.
It still feels like a Rob Zombie movie. He tends to add this tinge of humor, as we were talking about with Jerry. The humor gets escalated in Devil's Rejects almost to a really super inappropriate level.
Yeah.
There's some jokes that we laugh at, and you look back, you're like, oh, those are really some inappropriate shit in that movie.
For sure.
But it is all in fun. It's all in jest, and as he crosses some lines, but at the same time, it's like you never get a really dirty feeling. You know what I mean? It's like I think a lot of people
Right.
describe Rob
No, I know
Zombie's
what you
movies
mean.
as very dirty. But it's funny because I watch them and I don't get that feeling. I don't like. Obviously, he uses a very grimy aesthetic to
He does.
when the characters get dirty and are out there fighting and running from the law and crawling through sewers and shit. It is very grimy. It is very dirty. But I never feel like he's taking anything and exploiting it with any of his films. I don't feel like he's doing anything, in a disgusting manner. It always feels like it pertains to the story. It enhances the characters. It adds to everything. Yes, there are some times where I don't think he has to go as hard.
There's maybe one or two scenes I could say I think he probably regrets, but
he probably does.
Other than that, no, I agree. Some of it goes hard, but it just
feels like
it goes hard
reason.
for a reason.
Yeah,
and it's just good horror. Whenever it, not to sound like we're trying to explain why it is the way it is, but it is. It's just good horror. I think he just makes kick-ass horror movies.
Yeah, it's all for the intent of scaring you. If you're not scared, then what's the point of horror? And I think stuff like the Devil's Rejects, them abducting the people in the hotel and stuff, that is terrifying. I've gone on record before saying some of the scariest shit I've ever seen was The Strangers, because it's home invasion. It's shit that could really happen.
Right.
You could really find yourself in a situation where you're kidnapped by these lunatics and held at gunpoint. You never know. It's like, I think that is the stuff that's truly scary. And
right.
That's where Otis and Baby and Spaulding all evolved from being these over-the-top, like you said, almost, they weren't really supernatural, but they kind of teased it in a way.
They did kind of tease it, and they feel a bit more grounded in reality in the Devil's Rejects. But
and I think that's why they're scarier, is because they do feel more grounded in reality.
Well, that, and there's also, he has a lot of influence. It's, anyone that's watched these movies, it's not hard to kind of piece together, but, there are so many influences of actual serial killers and cults in the Firefly family. Like, Otis by himself is very Charles Manson.
Right. He even says a Charles Manson line.
Right.
Like you said, I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's work. That is a straight up Charles Manson quote.
Exactly.
And then in the first movie, we see Jerry and Bill going over the Manson family, the women of the Manson family, so there's definitely that Charles Manson influence, the Manson family cult influence.
Right. Time period alone of the movies. But yeah, I think that's what makes that second movie feel a little bit more creepy and weird, because they are, it does feel more grounded in our reality.
Yeah.
Whereas you have that supernatural in House of a Thousand Corpses that
right.
You're just like, well, that's not too believable that they put her down in a pit and there's weird zombie guys like running around. But
oh yeah, the ghouls in House of a Thousand Corpses were disgusting, terrifying, all of the above.
Right.
That scene scared the shit out of me. Devil's Rejects, scary in a different way, as we mentioned, and the film really ends on an interesting note because it looks like it's the end for them, because they get shot by the police and withstand some bullets that you don't think anybody could ever withstand. But this is not the end of the Firefly family. We'll get to that here very soon, but because they did get a sequel about 14 years later, but in those 14 years, he made a lot of movies, and we're going to talk about those. The one that came right after Devil's Rejects, Rob Zombie, he had House of a Thousand Corpses in 2003, Devil's Rejects in 2005. He had a lot of momentum, one of the most popular horror directors, and it was only natural that big studios would start pursuing him for certain jobs. And he got the biggest job right out of the gate, and we're talking about Halloween, 2007. He was tasked with rebooting and restarting the Michael Myers, Laurie Strode story of Halloween.
And oh my, did he piss a lot of people off.
He pissed a shitload of people off. But you know what? Everybody can go fuck off. I truly mean that. Like, anytime, and I am joking, but I do mean this, because so many people shit on the Halloween movies. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of the film, there is absolutely nothing wrong with this film. I think it's a great horror film. I think it's a terrific slasher. I think it's even a great Michael Myers film. People always bitch about, Michael Myers didn't need a backstory. Michael Myers didn't need this. We've
fucking seen that movie. I don't know how many times I have to say it. We've seen that movie. If you want that movie, go watch 1978 Halloween.
Right.
This is 2007 Halloween, directed by Rob Zombie. It had to be something different.
And I'm a big defender in even in the original Halloween, you see that Michael Myers was a little kid in a family. That alone is backstory enough for him. Like, it happens in the beginning of the movie.
Right.
I don't see anything wrong with taking that small scene and going, I wonder what those people were like. And I feel like, even though obviously his is very different, even setting-wise, kind of the feel of, the home in Halloween.
Right, because in 1978 it's more suburban, whereas
right.
this is more kind of low-income
exactly.
type family.
And it's this weird kind of broken home, obviously abusive dad. And it's like, yeah, that's not really what was portrayed in the original, but he's taking that family, he's taking that moment and a thought and going, I want to expand on this. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Because like you said, if you don't like it, that's okay. But I feel like for someone to want more Michael Myers movies, like we've wanted, and when we got, 2018 Halloween, we were eating that shit up, right?
Yeah.
Even with Halloween Ends, and I know I'm straying here a little bit.
No, you're not, because we talked about this not too long ago. People shit on that one too.
But even with Halloween Ends, I loved going to the theater. I loved seeing Michael Myers, and I loved seeing horror movies with other people who love horror movies. And that's the same feeling I have with Halloween 2007, because it's a different movie. Everybody wants something different out of a movie like this. And obviously you're never going to appease everybody.
No.
Because there's going to be people who are like, well, it's not as good as the original. I don't need this. And they want Halloween. But then if you give them a movie that's just like the original, they're like, well, you just fucking ripped off the original. Do something different.
It's like 1998 Psycho. It's like
right.
People bitched because it was a shot-for-shot remake. It's like, okay, we gave you something different. You shit on it. We gave you something that was exactly the same. You shit on it.
Right. That's what I mean. There's always a group that you can't please. So I just kind of ignore the people who really shit on it because of how different it is.
Or because it's a Rob Zombie movie.
Right.
It's like there's so many people who shit on it for the wrong
reasons.
reasons.
I'm over those reasons. Like,
it deserves its criticism, don't get me wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not perfect.
100%. There's some rough shit in it. But I thought, when I saw this movie, and it actually terrified me, because having young Michael Myers be this like really fucked up, like obvious signs of serial killer kind of shit.
Sociopathy type
right.
stuff, yeah.
But the scene whenever he kills his bully, like in the woods, he just bludgeons him to death, was so uncomfortable.
It's fucking rough.
And so, even though it is the beginning of Michael Myers, and a lot of people didn't like it, I thought that was so scary to kind of make him truly fucking psychotic and evil. Like, just he's evil.
Heartless.
Right, and like that's what Michael Myers would be. I don't want to think
he
of
had
a cute
the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. How the fuck do you think you get the blackest eyes and the devil's eyes? You get it by killing fucking kids when you're a kid. You get it from killing fucking animals. He got that way by a fucking reason.
Exactly, and I think that that's a cool concept because you look at the original cute little kid where he takes the little mask off, he's standing there and he's just like, "What did I do?" Like kind of look on his face. But, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I can't even, try to say it. I want to say it's Dig.
Dag Fark?
Yes.
Fark?
I'm really
I'm not
sorry.
sure how to pronounce it, but he's an amazing kid.
He's amazing. He's fucking awesome. The way he acts and just looks so empty when he needs to look empty and, rage-filled when he needs to look rage-filled. I think one of my favorite fucking scenes is, and I think this might be Halloween too, so forgive me if I'm thinking of the scene from the wrong movie, but, his mom is there and at the asylum with him, and his mask gets pulled off and he screams at her, and it's like this pure fucking psychotic rage, and he does it so well.
He does.
And I feel like that's a hard thing to do as a fucking kid actor.
Well, I said it in our found footage episode about Creep, how there's that scene where Mark Duplass is sitting in the hot tub and he just looks soulless. He looks like his eyes look completely vacant.
Yeah.
And one of the only other actors I've seen do it is this Dag Fark kid as Michael Myers, as young Michael Myers. He captures this soullessness, this emptiness, this hollow just there's nothing behind the eyes type look.
Yeah.
It's so beautifully done the way this kid does it. For being so young, he captures that essence of a young serial killer so well.
I agree. And of course, you get adult Michael Myers, which is Tyler Mane, which he was briefly in Devil's Rejects, so it's kind of cool to see that he was in something with him before. But Tyler Mane, probably one of my favorite fucking Michael Myers.
Terrific Michael Myers. Underrated Michael Myers. Like,
yeah.
We all love the original Nick Castle. We love James Jude Courtney. All sorts of great actors have played Michael Myers over the years. I was trying to think of the... I think it's George P. Wilbur was the one that they reference on Family Guy. Peter says, "Oh, he's my favorite actor," and talks about him playing him in Halloween 4. But so it's one of my favorite little gags there in Family Guy. But yes, Tyler Mane, terrific in Halloween as Michael Myers. As you mentioned, he was in Devil's Rejects. But he's also got a great stunt background. He was Sabretooth in the original X-Men movie in 2000. I am a big Tyler Mane fan.
I can tell.
Yeah, I think I
would have never known.
No, he was the original Sabretooth. He's done a lot done a lot of roles like that where he was a stunt performer, kind of under the radar in makeup, but you see his intimidating, his physical stature. He would be my number 1 draft pick for Michael Myers. I think he did just supremely good as Michael.
There's something very subtle about the Michael Myers walk that you see from actor to actor, and there's just something about the way he moves it probably has a little bit, of course, to do with the direction and the way the camera work is done for some of the angles and things, but he's just so fucking scary.
He is, and you get 2 of my favorite deaths in this film, which one is Danny Trejo's death, because when he's screaming, he's like, "I was good to you, Mikey. I was good to you." Oh my god, that scene! Like, I simultaneously want to laugh from laughter because it's Danny Trejo, and B, I want to laugh from sadness because Danny Trejo actually convinced me for a moment that he was really sad that he had to die.
Yeah,
it was really fucked up.
It was absolutely.
And he goes from playing scary. Rondo in fucking what was it, Devil's Rejects, this badass killer. And then we see him playing this really sensitive kind of orderly janitor type character in Halloween. I love that. "I was good to you, Mikey. I was good to you."
Yeah,
I love that scene.
It's fucking
hard
sad.
to watch.
But again, Rob Zombie showing how perfectly heartless Michael Myers is. He doesn't have an emotional connection with anything.
He had the blackest eyes. I don't know how many fucking times I need to say it. He is a soulless monster. It doesn't matter. We get to see how he got soulless. He is soulless.
Now, what's the second you said? It's 2.
Joe Grizzly. I love that. It's like, "I'm working on this big old burrito, man." I love Ken Foree, Indianapolis's own. Gotta give some love.
Represent.
Yeah, that's right. Ken Foree, horror legend. We saw him in Devil's Rejects as Charlie. We saw him in Dawn of the Dead. I think he has that infamous line, "When hell is full, the dead will walk the earth." I'm butchering it, but yeah. Ken Foree, I love Joe Grizzly. Him and Michael fighting. It's where he gets his jumpsuit. Yep. And we also, in the scene right before he dies, we get fucking Tom Sawyer playing. Like, that's another thing can we point out. The soundtrack to this movie is hands down one of the top 5 horror soundtracks of all time.
It's fucking great. Like,
you've got Rush.
The girls love Rush, man.
Oh yeah. And we see Rush come back in Lords of Salem. But yeah. So we've got Rush. We got fucking Nazareth because they play Love Hurts when his mom is stripping. Sherry Moon, of course, once again. We get some terrific... oh my gosh, who's Alice Cooper? Alice Cooper has a terrific song on the soundtrack. I absolutely adore it. So yeah, Halloween not only has some great kills, but also has a terrific soundtrack. But this movie, probably one of the weaker aspects where we will both agree deserves some criticism, is the acting of the protagonists, mainly being, and we love them, but we gotta point out they were not the best here. Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode, taking the mantle from Jamie Lee Curtis, and of course Danielle Harris playing Annie. And Danielle Harris, kind of a legacy star because she was also Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4 and 5. So, but yeah, their acting definitely left a little to be desired here. They were not strong actors at this point in their careers.
Yeah, I mean, you've got people, obviously, Loomis is played by Malcolm McDowell.
Legend.
And, he can do no fucking wrong. Like, he can act fucking Samuel Loomis in his sleep. But then, you've got like you said, Scout Taylor and Danielle Harris, and yeah, they could be better. Not everyone in this movie is perfect.
Danielle's a little bit better than Scout Taylor Compton because she's definitely a more veteran actress. Like, I think they could have used more Danielle Harris in this movie, whereas Scout Taylor Compton, although she was a child star, was a little bit, she was weaker, she was younger.
Well, and everyone makes fun of the screaming that she does is very, very frantic.
I don't mind her scream.
No. It's just whenever it's like in Halloween 2, which we're getting to right after this. We could just roll right into it. Halloween 2 came out in 2009.
Right. It was an immediate follow-up. Halloween 1 did so well, they followed up with Halloween 2.
Right.
And this is the one people probably shit on more than any of them. I see this on everybody's bottom of their Halloween film rankings.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off because I like this one too.
Me too.
It's worthy of its criticism, but I like this one a lot as well.
Absolutely. No, I'm 100% with you. I think the story, the way it carried into this one was really cool. Rob Zombie flair, him doing something so different that's never been done. You've got fucking Michael Myers hallucinating his mom with a white horse. Like, yeah, it's fucking weird. But
it is weird. It is out there. But
it's
you were
really
saying
cool.
something about the acting. We're going to bleed into this. Yeah.
So there's the scene where she realizes who she is. Because the Laurie Strode isn't actually Laurie Strode in this. She is... I'm Angel fucking Myers!
Oh my God.
And that's what I mean. She does the scream, whine, cry, talk thing.
Very whiny.
It's not so much her scream, because one of my favorite fucking endings is of the first Halloween when she is sitting over Michael and she gets the gun and she points it and you hear the trigger and just this unnecessary Rob Zombie amount of blood fucking flies back in her face and she's just like screaming. I love that fucking ending.
Blood-curdling scream.
I think she's a great scream queen.
Yeah, I would put that up there.
You know, she could be a little better.
Well, and like I said, I think she was young. There were some of her early roles of hers. She's not the most gifted thespian by any means, but
right.
She was a great horror scream queen, great for that teen role at the time. Had that look where if you showed me her and said this is Laurie Strode, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely, I could see that.
Yeah, no, I loved the updated style of all of the cast for his movies.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people shit on it. I know it's very different, but I really fucking like these movies.
I think his Halloweens are so underrated.
I wouldn't rate them at the bottom of my entire Halloween list.
No, because Halloween Resurrection fucking exists.
Exactly.
Let's not forget.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have Busta Rhymes doing kung fu to Michael Myers.
Exactly.
But Halloween 2, a couple things I want to point out that I really like about it. I love the opening in the hospital. I think a lot of people were pissed off that it turned out to be a dream sequence because the original Halloween 2, the entire film takes place in the hospital. Again, he decided to go a different route with this film.
Yep.
It was so well done. Brad Dourif deserves so much credit for his role. I think he was Sheriff Bracken. He was Sheriff Bracken in the film. He deserves so much credit. He really carried film 1 and film 2 in a way that it really needed. He brought so much to the role and so much presence to the film itself. But Danielle Harris, I know I criticized her acting before, but I think her death as Annie in Halloween 2 is one of the just most hard to watch deaths in any horror film.
It's a rough one.
Her death as Annie, Danielle Harris as Annie's death in fucking Halloween 2, gruesome, hard. It goes on forever. It's really uncomfortably long. He fucks her up in that scene.
He does. And I think the thing that's sad, too, is, you see her survive the first movie. So she's already a survivor.
Yeah.
And this shit happens. But it's terrifying. There's, the scene where she is looking in the mirror, I think, and she kind of turns and he's there and it just kicks in. And, I mean, the reveal scene whenever they find her and you don't even see her. I think at first it's just the walls and the mirror and everything.
Her reaction,
right.
Laurie's reaction,
and there's
to the
just
death.
Blood everywhere. Yeah, her death is fucking rough.
It is. I think it's the highlight of the film in my opinion. I think Annie's death is probably the best scene in the entire movie.
It is. It's a very pivotal moment, especially for our Laurie.
Yeah. Tremendous. And basically the film ends. It looks like they were trying to set up a third movie, and I think there were rumors that there was going to be a third movie. But again, people really did not like Halloween 2. It is, again, consistently at the bottom of everyone's list. I don't see why, but it was not very well received. So they ultimately scrapped it and decided to go with a new reboot completely, as we saw in 2018. The rights were acquired by Blumhouse, who got David Gordon Green to reboot it. And we got the Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends trilogy.
Yep.
But Rob Zombie moved on, and he was doing okay for himself because his next motion picture was The Lords of Salem. But before that, he did a little animated movie called The Haunted World of El Super Beasto. And I don't think we're going to spend a ton of time talking about Super Beasto, but it's weird.
It's weird.
It's a strange movie.
It's an experience.
It feels like one of those movies that would have been on like Comedy Central or Adult Swim, like really late at night.
It does. Some of the animation reminded me of a show that the name is spacing me right now. Drawn Together.
Drawn Together is very Drawn Together. I thought Ren and Stimpy, very Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, and a little Ren and Stimpy. Because the thing that was fucking weird to me is the animated girls with their perfectly round animated tits out have
so many animated tits in that
have
movie.
like Disney faces, like their eyes and stuff, the way it's done, like they all look like Disney princesses. And it was just fucking with me. And then you get this kind of like realism looking drawn characters, like you see the Firefly. God, I can't fucking say that for the life of me.
Firefly
family.
Guys, do a shot every time Natalie mispronounces fucking Firefly family.
I'll just say them. So you see Otis and Baby and Spalding like animated, and they look like a completely different animator came in and did them.
Right, but you also see Jack Torrance from The Shining. You see xenomorphs throughout the movie.
The horror references.
Beautifully done.
I mean, obviously he does them in like all of his movies, but there are some, very blatant, just in your face ones. Like we were just, it got kind of fun to just sit there and try to like peek around in the background and be like, who's there? Because like you see, you mentioned Jack Torrance, you see The Fly, Creature, some of the old school.
Mm-hmm. Bride of Frankenstein was in it.
Exactly. Yeah. But then you have this like luchador type guy as the main character who's also drawn completely differently.
Yeah.
It's fucking weird.
It's a weird movie. I recommend watching it because it is a lot of fun. And
it is fun.
But turn your brain off. Like
Absolutely.
If you're one of those people, like, if you watch, first off, if you don't turn your brain off before you watch a Rob Zombie movie, no wonder you fucking don't like them. They are those kind of movies you just got to turn your brain off and enjoy them. And that's
just let
Super
it happen
Beasto.
to you.
It is. Yeah, Super Beasto. He did this animated movie. It was around the same time Halloween 2. But 3 years later, we got 2012's Lords of Salem, his first original motion picture since House of a Thousand Corpses. Because if you think about it, Devil's Rejects was a sequel to Corpses, and the Halloween movies were established properties.
Right.
So this was really his first original film in 9 years.
And again, it was not well received.
Which I don't know why, because Lords of Salem is, to me, it's probably one of his most heady, kind of cerebral kind of movies.
I agree. It's very different than his other movies. You still get a lot of horror elements, and you get some gore, and you get some uncomfortable scenes and some just mental shit. But the way it's done, it is a little bit more artistic in the way it's filmed in certain aspects compared to how he normally films, I guess. But it is, to me, it's just such a pretty movie. I know a lot of people really, really like this movie, but it was not well received when it came out. I think a lot more people love it now. There's tons of people I see who get, little Lords of Salem tattoos, as I want one. But it's a pretty movie. It's a tragic movie. It's very different.
It's extremely different from his other work. It's less slasher. It is more supernatural, paranormal, because it delves into witches, namely the Salem witches. Obviously, as you can tell from the title, it goes back to the Salem witch trials. We kind of talked about this with our witch episode.
Yep.
But yeah, it's centers around Heidi, who's a radio DJ. She gets a mysterious record sent to her by a group only called the Lords, and we find out that it traces its origins back to a coven of witches that were hunted by one of Heidi's ancestors, and their ultimate vengeance is to take this ancestor of this Reverend John Hawthorne who persecuted them and make her an instrument of Salem's demise.
Yep.
And in that last shot, one of the most surreal, gorgeous endings to a film.
So pretty.
I love Lords of Salem. And I'm not just talking about the last shot of Sherry there with all the dead women. I'm talking about like that entire last sequence. From the moment she walks into the room and she's got the sweater and the face paint, you know, the iconic shit from the cover, and she sees that fucking burnt turkey looking thing at the top of the stairs. The minute that shit hits, it is just, we're off the rails. The train's going, no brakes. It's the movie's about to end. We're wrapping this shit up in the most psychotic way possible.
I think I couldn't have said it better myself. But you're right. You get all this chaos, and it's really tragic whenever the realization of this movie hits you that she's just been this victim of all of this through this whole movie.
She's a tool. She's an instrument.
Right.
You know, she lacks autonomy the entire movie.
Well, even just outside of, you know, the witch aspect, when you can tell that they've kind of got their claws in her and, you know, she's kind of retreating into herself. But you realize in the conversations that she has with kind of the love interest in the movie that she's had like drug abuse issues before, and you kind of realize she's never really quite been in control of herself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so fucking sad, but at the same time it's so pretty.
Well, and I we're sitting here saying like she hasn't had control, but it's funny because it's like when the movie starts, we're almost picking up and joining her right as she's getting control of herself and her life again. Like that's where the movie starts.
Yeah.
Is Heidi
like she's been clean, she's doing
clean,
better.
Yeah, she's got a successful job. She's doing really well for herself, but then all of a sudden now that she's got control of everything, shit just spirals out of control, and she becomes an instrument for this coven of witches. And it's, oh God, it's heartbreaking, the story of Heidi throughout this movie. If you watch the movie and you just follow the story of Heidi and Sherry's performance, which I think this is probably one of her better performances because it called on her to go through this big array of emotions.
I agree. And I know we've talked about it on episodes before, and I've said this is personally, you know, my favorite Sherry movie from him, but it's because of that, because you kind of have this still kind of Sherry Moonish character, but it is a bit more serious in the way that she has to change, because it goes from kind of this normal to this kind of hypnotized to not feeling well to clearly abusing again, and then just this spiral of out of control chaos. And you have weird cutscenes where she's like dancing with a goat man and shit, and she has to do all of these different things through this movie. And I think her performance is believable and how that person would feel. Agreed.
We go on a journey with Heidi through the whole film, and it's emotional, it's gripping. You know, like I said, she has to in the movie, in the beginning of the movie, like you said, she has to go from being completely normal to being, you know, all of these other things that you listed. And I think it's great because you see her, she's having fun, she's jovial, she's humorous, she's charismatic in the beginning of the film. You know, everybody loves her. She's, you know, again, she's a popular radio DJ. I mean, like the whole, basically you get the vibe that the whole town loves her and these guys who do the show. And then out of, you know, it just takes off from there, and she goes from being this loved kind of local celebrity to, you know, you're just a fucking weapon that we're gonna take you and weaponize you, and her drug addiction and her sadness are all part of that. It's a really, like I said, it's one of my favorite films. It's a beautiful film, and I think anybody who didn't like it, I recommend go back and watching it again, because I think there's a lot to unpack there.
I agree.
And so his next film that he did was 2016's 31. This film was crowdsourced to, as far as I know, I think it was his only one, unless he did that with 3 from Hell. But yeah, this was, he did this all on his own. He got the money from fans, and he made a movie he wanted to see, and boy, what a fucking movie it was.
Right, and as his theme continues, that a lot of the shit of his lands on Halloween. So whether it's a Halloween movie or his movies, so 31 obviously takes place on October 31st, where these people play a game called 31. We just talked about this quite recently.
We did. We talked about this in our Halloween episode. So go back and listen to that if you haven't. But yeah, 31, again, we've pointed out groundbreaking performance by Richard Brake.
Oh my gosh, the opening sequence, he doesn't blink. Like, if you watch it, at first I was like, that's not true. Watch it again, and he doesn't. It's like a fucking minute and a half, I don't even know how long scene, and he doesn't blink just to make it more unnerving and uncomfortable, because it feels like he's leaning in and he's in your face in that whole opening.
Well, it is. It's shot first person. We're supposed to feel like the Reverend at the beginning of the film, played by Daniel Roebuck, who was Grandpa Munster in the Munsters recently. Big regular for Rob Zombie.
Yep.
One of my favorite scenes is him getting killed in the beginning of 31 by Doomhead.
Right.
Doomhead's monologue to him, and then which, like you said, lasts for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then, of course, the Reverend kicks in and starts pleading for his life. And that famous quote, I love it, is like, you know what they say, Kemosabe, in hell, everyone loves popcorn. And what the fuck does that mean?
I don't know,
Nobody
man.
fucking knows, but that's the beauty that Doomhead brings to the table. You already know you're in for a fucking wild movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's terrific. Like I said, we did talk about this in our Halloween episode very recently, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on 31, but it's so good. I think probably my favorite thing in the whole movie that I can't not talk about it is when they get to Leo. Lucky Leo is one of my favorite fucking characters. I love when they pull up and she introduces herself. He's like, my name's Leo, Lucky Leo. And she's like, she starts messing with him and kind of, seducing him a little bit. And she's like, do you want to be my friend, Leo? And he's like, I sure do.
It's one of those things, though, that you're like, the movie doesn't need this fucking scene.
Doesn't need it.
But it just works in a Rob Zombie film.
It really does. It's so fantastic. Reminds me of the scene in House of a Thousand Corpses, Red Hot Pussy Liquor.
Absolutely.
Doesn't need to be there, but it serves this beautiful purpose. Again, I know we talked about that one in our Halloween episode as well. We love that scene. So yeah, Lucky Leo's another one that we really like. Just doesn't need to be there, but God, he makes the movie so much better.
He does. I feel like the whole scene's really just set up so she sees the weird puppet thing.
So that way we can tell at the end that she is in the same place.
Yeah.
But it's really our only movie where Sherry plays a final girl. Because up to that point, she's either been a villain or Michael Myers' mom or a weapon for this witch coven in Lords of Salem, which, obviously she's not really a final girl there. She more becomes a unwilling participant in everything. Accessory to murder. Sacrifice. And, so 31, she is Charlie. She's a final girl. And we get this badass ending where, Dream On by Aerosmith is playing. And Doomhead is standing there with his knives, even though the game's over and it looks like she should be able to get away. He's not fucking done with her.
Exactly.
And we see
He's pissed that she won the game, man.
Right? And we hear the guitar of the song, and she's sitting there, and she looks like she's ready to fight, but at the same time, you can tell she has no energy.
Yeah, dude.
No gumption. She just
fought
done.
for 12 hours.
She's fucking done, and Doomhead is just standing there with a fucking smile on his face and his fucking knives, and he's ready to cut her up. But that's how the scene ends. They're just standing there. We don't know how it ends. You can imagine. And then it goes into this really soft little music for the end credits. You're like, what the fuck, Rob Zombie?
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because so many people were talking about movies like Barbarian having just like, it goes into these happy credits. And I feel like that's how I felt with this, because you're sitting there and you're like, oh, is Charlie gonna like fucking finish this motherfucker off? Or is like she done for? Because really the only reason she's walking at this point is because the game ended.
And they're just done with her.
And he lets her go. But then you can tell he's pissed that she gets away.
Right. It's no longer about the game. Now it's, okay, you may have survived the game, but I'm still out here. I'm still a killer.
Right.
This was all happening in the confines of a game, but the game is fucking over.
Right. And that's fucking scary.
It's terrifying. That's what I'm saying. It's like, how do you not watch a Rob Zombie movie and just think these fucking psychopaths exist?
Exactly.
It's so scary.
But Doomhead he's probably one of my favorite characters in the Robbieverse. I don't know what I'm going to call this yet. Zombieverse. See? All right. But just the dialogue that Doomhead has, the way he like fucking puts his makeup on and like hypes himself up, punches himself in the face, but he's like just chill about everything else that he does. Like the moment he becomes Doomhead, he's just like smooth with everything that he does.
Yeah. What's he say is like, how much time I got? And he's telling like 4 hours. Like, I'd kill your whole family in that time. Just cool
Yeah.
as a fucking cucumber talking
Absolutely.
about slaughtering people.
Right. The way he walks into a room, the way he walks up to people. He's not like, he barely is running at anybody. He's just like fucking there.
It's
like moves like the shadows.
It's a great
fucking
movie.
awesome.
And yeah, the heads in the movie from sick head to psycho head, schizo
Death
head,
sex head, yeah.
Yeah, sex head, death head. Yeah, it's just glorious the way that it's a violent movie, it's a gory movie, it's an offensive movie.
It is an offensive
fucking
movie.
Sickhead alone is probably one of the most offensive characters in any movie I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get some great shit in this movie. I absolutely adore everything about 31.
See, and you talk about Sickhead, but then he becomes this lovely, endearing character in
does.
3 from Hell.
Yeah. 3 from Hell, that's the next one we're going to talk about. And of course, Pancho Malaire, who played Sickhead in 31, plays this, like Natalie said, very lovable little sidekick kind of character who helps the 3 from Hell.
Yeah, he kind of bonds with baby Firefly.
In a very sweet way. It's a very touching scene between Sherry and Pancho Malaire. They do a
It
great
is.
job.
I love the line whenever... I know we jumped way ahead because obviously,
We'll get
like,
back
there's a
to it.
whole jailbreak in the beginning
We'll
of
get
the
back
movie.
to it. We'll get there.
But the line whenever she's talking about how he reminds her of her brother Tiny,
Yeah.
and they're talking about like the way they look, and like she just talks about it and how beautiful he was, and I'm like, I fucking love the Firefly family.
Oh, yeah.
I said it.
There you go. Congratulations.
You guys didn't get a shot this time.
You're not going to get shit-faced tonight. Maybe
But
some
it
other
is.
time.
It's again, this comes in, it makes you feel like somehow even more connected to them when you shouldn't, because they're still just deplorable people.
They really are. So the film opens with the ending of Devil's Rejects, where we see them in the shootout, and somehow they miraculously survive. And he even makes a big deal with all these headlines about how did they survive, how did they make it. But we quickly go into they are now these loved villains in the media. They're portrayed as people who are wrongfully pursued by the authorities. They shouldn't be in the position that they're in. They're the subject of documentaries. And that's really our final scene with Sid and Captain Spaulding is, I think Rob Zombie told the story about how Sid was not doing well at this moment, but he just needed this scene to kind of tie up the story of Captain Spaulding. And we get this beautiful moment where Spaulding is talking to this documentary crew, and he just outright says, he's like, you want me to be this villain, this monster? Well, guess what? I am. And it's just beautiful. His last words that we see, he admits to being the fucking just beast that we know him to be. And then, of course, he is then executed.
Yeah.
We are left with Otis and Baby. And then Otis is sprung from the clink by an old friend named Foxy.
Love Foxy.
The
Also
Midnight
Richard
Wolf
Brake.
Man, played by Richard Brake, the Midnight Wolf Man. And he springs Otis out. They're on the run, and then they have to break out Baby. And God, this one,
Baby's prison break is fucking awesome.
The whole fucking movie is just.
And again, kudos to Sherry to totally changing how Baby would be, because they show the passage of time with this movie, and she's super fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
And she plays it so well. The way she goes into this little whispery voice is fucking creepy to me every time I watch this movie.
Yeah, you can definitely tell prison has taken its toll on Baby. And I think one of the most touching scenes in the film, I love where they are in the hotel room after they've broken Baby out of jail, and they have this moment. She's like, it's just you and me now, Otis. And of course, Foxy is offended because he's there. But it's this great moment because you could tell Rob Zombie was almost like, it was a very personal scene, because when you think about all the people from House of a Thousand Corpses that we have truly lost,
right?
A lot of that cast is legitimately passed away. Karen Black, Mama Firefly, Sid Haig, Captain Spaulding, Michael J. Pollard, unfortunately passed away. Matt McGorry, who played Tiny, has passed away. Tom Towles, who played the original cop in House of a Thousand Corpses. Waddell played the original Waddell. He's dead. It's a lot of the cast is gone. So for Sherry, as Baby to look at Otis and say, it's just us now. It's really sad. And then you factor in the characters who died. They killed RJ,
right.
Who, both of his actors are still alive, but they killed the character.
It's definitely one of those, I feel like you're like, yeah, for them, the characters, it is just them. They've lost their whole family. Right. But then you're right. In the world of Rob Zombie, it's kind of like, it is just you guys now.
Yeah. They've lost so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of more who I could go on for days of all the people who unfortunately that we've lost, and House of a Thousand Corpses was only 19 years ago. It's amazing. Right. In 19 years, a lot of that cast unfortunately has just passed on.
Exactly.
And I think that was like in 3 from Hell, they have that beautiful touching moment where they kind of pay tribute to everybody, right before they run to Mexico and start some shit down there.
Right. And, which again is weird to say that they're these endearing characters, because one of my favorite things that I have to talk about before the Mexico scene is there's a scene when they get Otis out of prison and they're running and they happen upon like these 2 campers out in the woods. Well, the awesome thing about that scene is the woman is actually Bill Moseley's wife.
Yeah, his wife Lucinda has a cameo. It's the scene, if you're wondering where it is, it's the two people have them at gunpoint in the woods, Otis and Foxy, and
they blow the guy's head off.
Blow the guy's head off, and he gets fucking skull in his eye. And Otis says all these awful, deplorable fucking things to this woman.
Yeah, asking her if the knife is sharp, and he's like, well, you better hope it is, kind of a thing. Just it's like he's about to cut her fucking face off.
But at the same time, I remember Natalie and I watched it on a second or third viewing, and we were like, oh, how sweet is that? That's his wife. Right. As he says all of this awful, disgusting, inhumane shit to her right before he kills her character. But it's so touching, because obviously Bill Moseley is a giant sweetheart.
Yes,
and it seems like his wife is much the same way. And the fact that they got to have this cute moment on screen, we say cute, it's pretty scary. But the fact they got to have this moment on screen is pretty cool.
Exactly. And you keep saying it's cute, and it is. It's like whenever you look at it, it's just looking at the people and knowing who they are. You're like, oh, it's so cute that they just kind of like let her be in the movie for this part. And I know he's made jokes about thanks for letting me kill my wife and shit like that.
Well, and I think it's funny you say that, because I think there was a moment on Instagram where Bill Moseley wished his wife happy birthday, and Richard Brake commented and said, I've still got that skull in my fucking eye.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, it's it's so funny to see that they still are all so tight and interact with each other. And 3 from Hell, for all intents and purposes, it seems like it tied up the story of the Firefly family. As we said, they emphasize that it's just Otis and Baby now. Mm-hmm. And, thankfully they had Richard Brake step in when Sid was unable to do it. And they had this great new character. And
absolutely. I love Foxy.
Yeah, but I remember being very reluctant. Like, this has a lot of things I don't like about films. I don't think I've ever really talked about this, but you clearly you have to replace the character. Mm-hmm. I always hate I always feel like when movies are backed into a corner and they have to replace a character, it never comes out right. I had hope because it was Richard Brake, but still it was like, that dynamic of Sid and, Tutti fucking Fruity and just so much fun that we had in Devil's Rejects. Is it going to be the same? And thankfully it was. Yeah. So it had that going against it, but I was like, I'm going to give it a chance. The other thing I fucking hate when movies do the thing of, let's go to Mexico. It's like this trope in so many of these like these shitty action sequels. I've seen how many shitty horror movies always go to the West or go to a ghost town or go to Mexico.
Yeah, it's not just like we're gonna go hide somewhere. I totally get the trope, and it's like, yeah, I get it. It's a smart idea to go, like, obviously get away from the law.
Right.
But it is. I agree with you. But you do get this kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek, like gang shootout style type shit.
Oh man.
And it's kind of fun. Like,
it is a lot of fun.
It just goes off the rails. You look back at House of a Thousand Corpses and where it was in this weird, creepy fucking house in Texas. And then you have them on the run, and then you have them in Mexico. And it's just the fact that he gave us so much out of these 3 movies. You get this full story, and you kind of hate them, but you kind of love them. And they're horrible fucking people, but like they're family. Right. And you're like, I love that for them.
Right. It's definitely a better family story than the fucking Fast and the Furious movies. So I mean, geez, like it definitely has that going for it. But it has this beautiful ending where, they're all roughed up from this fight with the fucking Black Satans.
Yeah.
I fucking love that name, the Black
It's
Satans.
totally amazing.
It's a great name for a fucking gang that they're fighting. So yeah. So they're fighting the Black Satans, and they take the leader and they burn him alive, and they're driving home with licking their wounds. But you have this song. It's called "Faith to Arise." Beautiful song. Sherry's driving. It's black and white. They're on the open road, and Foxy and Otis are in the back seat, and you just, man, it's a really beautiful ending for these awful fucking characters.
Yeah.
But we followed them for 16 fucking years, man. Like, we
Right.
wanted them to get their ending, and they did, and it's beautiful.
It is.
But the most recent film that Rob Zombie has given us this year, we got The Munsters.
Well,
it wasn't the best movie.
I liked it.
It was fun. It was fun.
I liked
enjoyed
the
it.
way it looked.
Love the way it looks.
I think the biggest complaint is kind of the weird pacing of feeling like there needed to be a lot in the beginning and then a really quick ending. Even the beginning, I felt like there were moments I was like, what's happening? Why is this scene still going?
Oh man, there were scenes that went on too long. There were scenes that didn't go on long enough. It was just,
Right.
It was a lot. But I love the fact that Rob Zombie was clearly a fan of the Munsters. I mean, his fucking
Right.
biggest song is called Dragula. His biggest song
Exactly.
is named after Herman Munster's drag car.
Right.
Like, he's a fan. And then he's dropped references in all of his movies about the Munsters.
All
So
the way back to House of a Thousand Corpses.
we were extremely happy that he got to make his Munsters movie. And yeah, like I said, it's not a classic movie. It's not Citizen Kane by any means, but it was fun to see him getting to do something he's always wanted to do. And he's one of our favorite filmmakers, so there were definitely a lot of his signatures there. You had some of the actors that we're used to seeing.
The fucking lighting alone,
Oh, it's gorgeous.
like, felt like, and I think I kind of mentioned it with some of the set design too, is Rob Zombie likes busy looking things.
Very busy.
And I feel like all the rooms in the home like had so much going on. Like, even the dinner table, there was so much shit on the table.
Uh-huh.
And again, those little things that I feel like it's kind of Rob Zombie's style. But the lighting, like taking these sites that they went and filmed at and having these big, beautiful castles and then going, I want fucking green, neon, and purple lights on that wall.
Say no
and I
more.
want red over there. And it's like, that's how half the scenes look. But they're so fucking neat.
Yeah. And if you're like, I was a fan of the Munsters growing up. We talked about this. Like, you were either a kid you grew up on Addams Family or Munsters.
Right. And I'm an Addams Family girl.
Natalie was an Addams Family girl. I was a Munsters girl. Like, that was definitely my shit growing up. I used to stay up late night, Nick at Night, and I would watch the Munsters all the time. So I loved it. And of course you had our guy from Pet Sematary who played Herman Munster, the original. Mm-hmm. So we've got Fred Gwynn. Love Fred Gwynn. I think he was an amazing actor and gifted us with some great performances as Herman Munster.
Yeah.
Yvonne DiCarlo did wonderful as Lily. But then we got Jeff Daniel Phillips taking on the role of Herman. Mm-hmm. We got Sherry Moon taking on the role of Lily. And they have they've always had great chemistry. Jeff Daniel Phillips and Sherry are just goals.
They're both fucking awesome.
Yeah, like I love watching those two in a movie together.
Me too.
Like,
Lords of Salem makes my heart pitter patter.
Yeah, they have such a wonderful connection, and obviously, like I said, the movie's a little strangely paced, but their chemistry really kind of keeps you hooked. And they have this great duet where they do "I Got You, Babe" by Sonny and Cher, which I thought was just hilarious.
And I love the way Lily's hair changes a couple of times for those scenes, and just the cool outfit design. Like, aesthetically, this movie is off the fucking charts.
It
if there's a ranking, it blows it out of the water.
It deserves an award just for the set design and the lighting and all that alone.
Also, I want to say that even though it's Rob Zombie, this is perfectly the Munsters. Like, there's nothing horrific about it at all. And I loved seeing that there were a lot of people who were like, my kid is seeing the Munsters. This is his first Rob Zombie movie.
Exactly.
I'm like, fuck yeah, get that little kid into that shit. Like, it's total gateway horror.
This will
movie.
be the gateway for a lot of kids. I mark my words. In 10 years, we're gonna see, maybe not TikTok, whatever the fuck the thing is that kids will be using in 10 years, and we're gonna see them. It's like, oh my God, guys, do you remember this movie from Netflix from 2022? And it's going to be the fucking Munsters. And
it'll be the
like,
I Got You Babe, people doing duets with each other.
People cosplaying as, Jeff Daniel Phillips Herman. It'll be a thing, trust me. And then, of course, we get a beautiful cameo from Elvira herself, Cassandra Peterson, at the end of the film.
Yes, as a lovely green-faced witch.
I had so much fun watching this movie. Is it a classic? Absolutely fucking not. Is it? Will
it be to some people? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a comfort movie to turn on and just have on? Probably, because you can zone in and out of this movie and not fucking miss anything.
Exactly. And for those of us who have ADHD and our brains move 100 miles an hour, and this movie moves at 100 miles an hour sometimes. This movie is wonderful.
And sometimes when it's slow, it gives you time to just kind of zone out and think about the things that you forgot to do, and then you're back in the movie.
Right.
You didn't miss anything.
It's funny, we talk about how it's weirdly paced, but maybe it's just because our brains are weirdly paced, and
I don't
we kind
know.
of noticed it more. I don't know, but it was.
There were definitely moments I was bored. There were definitely moments I felt like it went on for too long. But yeah, I think it was pretty. It got the point across. It landed us to, the iconic fucking Munsters house. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we don't need prequel shit. We don't need backstory. I'm sure there's plenty of backstory in the Munsters show.
But if you've learned anything from this episode, you've learned that Rob Zombie takes your expectations and says, fuck you. And he does whatever he's going to do.
Reduce your expectations to 0.
It's so Rob Zombie. And I think that is the perfect thing we can say. Rob Zombie, he's still making movies. I don't know what his next film's going to be. Nobody does at this point. We're sitting here at the end of 2022, and we just got the Munsters.
I'll say, yeah, we're just
super
barely
pumped
a month out at this point, really. So we don't know what's going to be. Is it going to be another fucked up thing? Is it going to be another animated?
Could he do another animated movie? I'd love to see a Super Beasto sequel.
Or is it just going to be more Munsters? Because now that they're settled into the house, is he going to do a full Munsters with the family?
I would love a Munsters TV show produced by Rob Zombie.
That'd be awesome.
I'd love to see that. And of course, he's already partnered up with Netflix for the movie. It's like, so we can at least get a season since it's Netflix. We can at least get one season of a show. Fucking Netflix never lets anything go past a season. So, yeah, I'd love to see that. Hopefully that's what's in the cards. But regardless, we will be there day one, next fucking movie Rob Zombie releases. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it's called. It could be Rob Zombie does a remake of Like Mike. I don't give a fuck. I will watch it. It will be on my DVD collection. Like, what else can I say?
I hope he does The Descendants.
Oh, yes. Rob Zombie's The Descendants. Could you imagine? He's like, all right, Maleficent, you're getting a bit of a makeover. By the way, it's Sherry Moon.
Oh my God, we don't need that.
But that has been our episode on Rob Zombie. He is our first hero of Horrorzoid, not the last. We've got a lot more coming. But he is absolutely one of our favorite directors. We owe him so much. He's given us endless hours of entertainment. We love him. We don't think he gets the respect and the credibility that he deserves.
I agree, 100%. Him and all of the people that he's worked with, people that he continues to work with, obviously with Munsters, a lot of his original people are there. But I think he does deserve more, and I hope, eventually more people will see that. But until then, it's us, the people who like him, the girlies who get it.
He's going to be that fucking director that in years, like in 20 years, people are going to look at it. There's going to be some film scholar. It's like, today we're going to examine the works of Mr. Rob Zombie. And he's going to break down why these are actually the most brilliant films ever made. And people are going to be like, son of a bitch. He's right. These are classic cinema. Like, mark my words, I think in 20 years, Rob Zombie is going to be looked at a lot more with a lot more respect and reverence than he gets now, for sure.
He's living in the year 3000.
He is. He's playing chess. We're all playing fucking checkers over here. And with that being said, guys, we're going to leave you with this.
Yeah, we like to get fucked up and do some fucked up shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to get fucked up too. Do some fucked up shit. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorzoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.